following passage is taken from Andy Nowicki's The Man Who Leapt Out of Time. This is a fictional work that's being published in serialized form. Part 3 has just been published, and it, like parts 1 and 2, are available on Amazon Kindle for just $1. What will be read today by the author is an excerpt from Part 3. This excerpt may also be seen on my Substack page, andynowicki.substack.com. In this passage, our man, who has been mysteriously flung into the past after an attempted suicide, reflects upon having cuckolded his younger self by seducing his young wife, a task he accomplished whilst shielded in a cloak of invisibility. It was this absence of surety over what was truly real that, at least in part, motivated my behavior from that juncture forward. I do not declare this out of any effort to justify myself or rationalize anything, but that was just it. There was nothing rational whatsoever about the circumstances into which I had been thrust. Instead, it was like a massively elongated fever dream, even though I must admit that it didn't in the least feel like any kind of dream I had ever had before. Instead, it felt quite real, I had to admit. But still, what did real even mean, given everything I had experienced? And so, like one who dreams, and becomes aware that he is dreaming but remains asleep, I began to indulge my whims without restraint. As the reader will no doubt surmise, most of my whims focused upon the person of my young wife. I had already successfully seduced her on that fateful day at her school, so I had something to build upon. What was more, she had neglected to mention anything about the incident to my younger self, but had only greeted him that evening with increased erotic fervor, which to me was highly suggestive of two things. One, she knew it would be best to keep the experience, whatever she had perceived it to be, a secret from her husband, that is, from my younger self. And two, she had found our entanglement to be a source of considerable delectation, as indicated again by the enhanced level of passion that she displayed that evening whilst making love to her husband, that is, my younger self. I knew, therefore, that she must be thinking, wondering, perhaps even dreaming, if, that is, she were indeed real and not just a part of my own dream fabric, like everything else my consciousness had been experiencing since my unsuccessful effort at self-extinguishment, of further encounters with this phantom lover who had introduced himself to her so memorably on that day, now nearly 2 weeks ago. Sensing that that was indeed so, I waited even longer to prolong her desirousness and work it up to a near unbearable threshold. During that span of time, of course, she did not neglect to attend to her marital relations, but I had the impression that, regardless of how conscientiously she strove to keep things spicy in the bedroom with her husband, their lovemaking had, in fact, now become something of a chore for her. My young wife, in fact, hungered ever more ravenously to re-experience contact with that mysterious being who had engaged her so seemingly randomly on that occasion, at first startling her until she sensed a familiarity with him that she couldn't quite explain, even to herself. That very warmth of impossible affinity, paradoxically coupled with an equally intense apprehension of utter incomprehension regarding his presence and identity, filled her with an intense yearning which tied her insides up in knots. She wished eagerly for his return, so that those knots might at least be aggressively loosened, if not forcibly unfastened, that she may know true relief and release again.